the Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Adi Parva. Section 156, Hidimvan Badha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, roused from sleep, those tigers among men, with their mother, beholding the extraordinary beauty of Hidimvan, were filled with wonder. And Kunti, gazing at her with wonder at her beauty, addressed her sweetly and gave her every assurance. She asked, O thou of the splendor of a daughter of the celestials, whose art thou and who art thou, O thou of the fairest complexion, on what business hast thou come hither, and whence hast thou come? If yet you art the deity of these woods or an Apsara, tell me all regarding thyself, and also why thou stayest here. Thereupon Hidimvan replied, This extensive forest that thou sayest, of the hue of blue cloud, is the abode of a Rakshasa of the name of Hidimvan, as also of mine. O handsome lady, know me as the sister of that chief of the Rakshasa. Reverend dame, I had been sent by that brother of mine to kill thee with all thy children. But on arriving here at the command of that cruel brother of mine, I beheld thy mighty son color like pure gold. Then, O blessed lady, I was brought under the control of thy son by the deity of love who pervadeth the nature of every being, and I then, mentally, chose that mighty son of thine as my husband. I tried my best to convey you hence, but I could not, because of thy son's opposition. Then the cannibal, seeing my delay, came hither to kill all these thy children. But he hath been dragged hence with doors by that mighty and intelligent son of thine my husband. Behold now that couple man and Rakshasa both endued with great strength and prowess, engaged in combat, grinding each other and filling the whole region with their shouts. Vasampayana continued, hearing those words of hers, Yudhishthira suddenly rose up, and Arjuna also, and Nakula and Sahadeva of great energy, and they beheld Bhima and the Rakshasa already engaged in fight, eager to overcome each other and dragging each other with great doors, like two lions endued with great might. The dust raised by their feet in consequence of that encounter looked like the smoke of a forest conflagration. Covered with that dust, their huge bodies resembled two tall cliffs enveloped in mist. Then Arjuna, beholding Bhima rather oppressed in the fight by the Rakshasa, slowly said, with smiles on his lips, Fear not, O Bhima of mighty arms. We had been asleep and therefore knew not that thou wast engaged with a terrible Rakshasa and tired in fight. Here do I stand to help thee, let me slay the Rakshasa, and let Nakula and Sahadeva protect our mother. Hearing him, Bhima said, Look on this encounter, O brother, like a stranger. Fear no for the result. Having come within the reach of my arms, he shall not escape with life. Then Arjuna said, What need, O Bhima, for keeping the Rakshasa alive so long? O oppressor of enemies, we are to go hence, and cannot stay here longer. The east is reddening, the morning twilight is about to set in. Rakshasa became stronger by break of day, therefore, hasten, O Bhima. Play not with thy victim, but slay the terrible Rakshasa soon. During the two twilights Rakshasas always put forth their powers of deception. Use all the strength of thy arms. Vasampayana continued. At this speech of Arjuna, Bhima, blazing up with anger, summoned the might that Vayu, his father, puts forth at the time of the universal dissolution. And filled with rage, he quickly raised high in the air Rakshasa's body, blue as the clouds of heaven, and whirled at 100 times. Then addressing the cannibal, Bhima said, O Rakshasa, thy intelligence was given thee in vain, and in vain hast thou grown and thrived on unsanctified flesh. Thou deservest, therefore, an unholy death, and I shall reduce thee today to nothing. I shall make this forest blessed today, like one without prickly plants. And, O Rakshasa, thou shalt no longer slay human beings for thy food. Arjuna at this juncture said, For O Bhima, if thou thinkest it a hard task for thee to overcome this Rakshasa in combat, let me render thee help, else, slay him thyself without loss of time. Or, O Vrikodra, let me alone slay the Rakshasa. Thou art tired, and hast almost niched the affair. Well dost thou deserve rest. Vasampayana continued, hearing these words of Arjuna, Bhima was fired with rage and dashing the Rakshasa on the ground with all his might slew him as if he were an animal. The Rakshasa, while dying, sent forth a terrible yell that filled the whole forest, and was deep as the sound of a wet drum. Then the mighty Bhima, holding the body with his hands, bent it double, and breaking it in the middle, greatly gratified his brothers. Beholding Hidimvan slain, they became exceedingly glad and lost no time in offering their congratulations to Bhima, that chastiser of all foes. Then Arjuna, worshipping the illustrious Bhima of terrible prowess, addressed him again and said, Reverend Senior, I think there is a town not far off from this forest. Blessed be thou, let us go hence soon, so that Duryodhana may not trace us. Then all those mighty car warriors, those tigers among men, saying, So be it, proceeded along with their mother, followed by Hidimvan, the Rakshasa woman. Thus ends the 156th section in the Hidimvan Badha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 157, Hidimvan Badha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, Bhima, beholding Hidimvan following them, addressed her, saying, Rakshasas revenged themselves on their enemies by adopting deceptions that are incapable of being penetrated. Therefore, O Hidimvan, go thou the way on which thy brother hath gone. Then Yudhishthira, beholding Bhima in rage, said, O Bhima, O tiger among men, however enraged, do not slay a woman. O Pandava, the observance of virtue is a higher duty than the protection of life. Hidimvan, who had come with the object of slaying us, thou hast already slain. This woman is the sister of that Rakshasa, what can she do to us even if she were angry? Vasampayana continued, then Hidimvan, reverentially saluting Kunti and her son Yudhishthira also, said, with joined palms, O reverend lady, thou knowest the pangs that women are made to feel at the hands of the deity of love. Blessed dame, these pangs, of which Bhimsena hath been the cause, are torturing me. I had hitherto borne these insufferable pangs, waiting for the time, when thy son could assuage them. O, be graceful unto me and make Bhima accept me. O, be graceful unto me and make Bhima accept me. It hath been said that in a season of distress one should protect his life by any means. He that seeketh to discharge that duty should not scruple about the means. He that in a season of distress keepeth his virtue, is the foremost of virtuous men. Indeed, distress is the greatest danger to virtue and virtuous men. It is virtue that protecteth life, therefore is virtue called the giver of life. Hence the means by which virtue or the observance of a duty is secured can never be censurable. Hearing these words of Hidimvan, Yudhishthira said, It is even so, O Hidimvan, as thou sayest. there is no doubt of it. But O thou of slender waist, yet you must act even as thou hast said. Bhima will, after he hath washed himself and said his prayers and performed the usual propitiatory rites, pay his attentions to thee till the sun sets. Sport thou with him as thou likest during the day, O thou that art endued with the speed of the mind. But thou must bring back Bhimsena hither every day at nightfall. Vasampayana continued. Then Bhima, expressing his assent to all that Yudhishthira said, addressed Hidimvan, saying, Listen to me, O Rakshasa woman. Truly do I make this engagement with thee that I will stay with thee, O thou of slender waist, until thou obtainest a son. Then Hidimvan, saying, So be it, took Bhima upon her body and sped through the skies. On mountain peaks of picturesque scenery and regions sacred to the gods, abounding with dappled herds and echoing with the melodies of feathered tribes, herself assuming the handsomest form decked with every ornament and pouring forth at times mellifluous strains. Hidimvan sported with the Pandav and studied to make him happy. So also, inaccessible regions of forests, and on mountain breasts overgrown with blossoming trees, on lakes resplendent with lotuses and lilies, islands of rivers and their pebbly banks, on sylvan streams with beautiful banks and mountain currents, in picturesque woods with blossoming trees and creepers in Himalayan bowers, and various caves, on crystal pools smiling with lotuses, on seashores shining with gold and pearls, in beautiful towns and fine gardens, in woods sacred to the gods and on hillsides, in the regions of Guhayakas and ascetics, on the banks of Mansavara abounding with fruits and flowers of every season, Hidimvan, assuming the handsomest form, sported with Bhima and studied to make him happy. Endued with the speed of the mind, she sported with Bhima in all these regions, till, in time, she conceived and brought forth a mighty son begotten upon her by the Pandav. Of terrible eyes and large mouth and straight arrowy ears, the child was terrible to behold. Of lips brown as copper and sharp teeth and loud roar, of mighty arms and great strength and excessive prowess, this child became a mighty bowman. Of long nose, broad cheti, frightfully swelling calves, celerity of motion and excessive strength, he had nothing human in his countenance, though born of man, and he excelled, in strength and prowess, all Pisachas and kindred tribes as well as all Rakshasas. And, O monarch, though a little child, he grew up a youth the very hour he was born. The Miganti hero soon acquired high proficiency in all weapons. The Rakshasas women bring forth the very day they conceive, and capable of assuming any forms at will, they always change their forms, for the purpose hand. And the blood-headed child, that mighty bowman, soon after his birth, bowing down to his mother, touched her feet and the feet also of his father. His parents then bestowed upon him a name. His mother having remarked that his head was bald, like unto a khata, water pot, both his parents thereupon called him Khatotkacha, the pot-headed. And Khatotkacha, who was exceedingly devoted to the Pandavas, became a great favorite with them, indeed, almost one of them. Then Hidimvan, knowing that the period of her stay with her husband had come to an end, saluted the Pandavas and making a new appointment with them went away whithersoever she liked. And Khatotkacha also, that foremost of Rakshasas, promising unto his father that he would come when wanted on business, saluted them and went away northward. Indeed, it was the illustrious Indra who created, by lending a portion of himself, the mighty Kaveri or Khatotkacha as a fit antagonist of Kama of unrivaled energy, in consequence of the dart he had given unto Kama, and which was sure to kill the person against whom it would be hurled. Thus ends the 157th section in the Hidimva Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 158, Hidimvan Badha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, those mighty car warriors, the heroic Pandavas, then went, O king, from forest to forest killing deer and many animals, for their food. And in the course of their wanderings they saw the countries of the Matsyas, the Trigatas, the Panchalas and then of the Kichkas, and also many beautiful woods and lakes therein. And they all had matted locks on their heads and were attired in barks of trees and the skins of animals. Indeed, with Kunti in their company those illustrious heroes were attired in the garbs of ascetics. And those mighty car warriors sometimes they proceeded in haste, carrying their mother on their backs, and sometimes they proceeded in disguise, and sometimes again with great celerity. And they used to study the Rig and the other Vedas and also all the Vedangas as well as the sciences of morals and politics. And the Pandavas, conversant with the science of morals, met, in course of their wanderings their grandfather, Vyasa. And saluting the illustrious Krishna-Dwaipayana, those chastisers of enemies, with their mother, stood before him with joined hands. Vyasa then said, Ye bulls of Bharata's race, I knew beforehand of this affliction of yours consisting in your deceitful exile by the son of Dhritarashtra. Knowing this, I have come to you, desirous of doing you some great good. Do not grieve for what hath befallen you. Know that all this is for your happiness. Undoubtedly, the sons of Dhritarashtra and you all are equal in my eye. But men are always partial to those who are in misfortune or of tender years. It is therefore, that my affection for you is greater now. And in consequence of that affection, I desire to do you good. Listen to me, I not far off before you is a delightful town where no danger can overtake you. Live ye there in disguise, waiting for my return. Vasampayana continued, Vyasa, the son of Satyavati, thus comforting the Pandavas, led them into the town of Ekachakra. And the master also comforted Kunti, saying, Live, O daughter, I this son of thine, Yudhishthira, ever devoted to truth, this illustrious bull among men, having by his justice conquered the whole world, will rule over all the other monarchs of the earth. There is little doubt that, having by means of Bhima's and Arjuna's prowess conquered the whole earth with her belt of seas, he will enjoy the sovereignty thereof. The sons as well as these of Madri mighty car warriors all will cheerfully sport as pleaseth them in their dominions. These tigers among men will also perform various sacrifices, such as the Rajasuya and the horse sacrifice, in which the presents unto the Brahmanas are very large. And these thy sons will rule their ancestral kingdom, maintaining their friends and relatives in luxury and affluence and happiness. Vasampayana continued, with these words Vyasa introduced them into the dwelling of a Brahmana. And the island-born Rishi, addressing the eldest of the Pandavas, said, Wait here for me. I will come back to you. By adapting yourselves to the country and the occasion you will succeed in becoming very happy. Then, O king, the Pandavas with joined hands said unto the Rishi, So be it. And the illustrious master, the Rishi Vyasa, then went away to the region whence he had come. Thus ends the 158th section in the Hidimvan Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 159, Vakabadha Parva. Janamejaya asked, O first of Brahmanas, what did the Pandavas, those mighty car warriors, the sons of Kunti, do, after arriving at Ekachakra? Vasampayana said, those mighty car warriors, the sons of Kunti, on arriving at Ekachakra, lived for a short time in the abode of a Brahmana. Heading an eleemosynary life, they beheld, in course of their wanderings, various delightful forests and earthly regions, and many rivers and lakes, and they became great favorites of the inhabitants of that town in consequence of their own accomplishments. At nightfall they placed before Kunti all they gathered in their mendicant stores, and Kunti used to divide the whole amongst them, each taking what was allotted to him. And those heroic chastisers of foes, with their mother, together took one moiety of the whole, while the mighty Bhima alone took the other moiety. In this way, O bull of Bharata's race, the illustrious Pandavas lived there for some time. One day, while those bulls of the Bharata race were out on their tour of mendicancy, it so happened that Bhima was at home with his mother, Pritha. That day, O Bharata, Kunti heard a loud and heart-rending wail of sorrow coming from within the apartments of the Brahmana. Hearing the inmates of the Brahmana's house wailing and indulging in piteous lamentations, Kunti, O king, from compassion and the goodness of her heart, could not bear it with indifference. Afflicted with sorrow, the amiable Pritha, addressing Bhima, said these words full of compassion, our woes assuaged, we are, O son, living happily in the house of this Brahmana, respected by him and unknown to Dhritarashtra's son. O son, I always think of the good I should do to this Brahmana like what they do that live happily in others' abodes. O child, he is a true man upon whom favors are never lost. He payeth back to others more than what he receiveth at their hands. There is no doubt, some affliction hath overtaken this Brahmana. If we could be of any help to him, we should then be requiting his services. Hearing these words of his mother, Bhima said, ascertain, O mother, the nature of the Brahmana's distress and whence also hath it arisen. Learning all about it, relieve it I will, however difficult may the task prove. Vasampayana continued, while mother and son were thus talking with each other, they heard again, O king, another wail of sorrow proceeding from the Brahmana and his wife. Then Kunti quickly entered the inner apartments of that illustrious Brahmana, like unto a cow running towards her tethered calf. She beheld the Brahmana with his wife, son and daughter, sitting with a woeful face, and she heard the Brahmana say, O, fie on this earthly life which is hollow as the reed and so fruitless after all, which is based on sorrow and hath no freedom, and which hath misery for its lot. Life is sorrow and disease, life is truly a record of misery. The soul is one, but it hath to pursue virtue, wealth and pleasure. And because these are pursued at one and the same time, there frequently occurs a disagreement that is the source of much misery. Some say that salvation is the highest object of our desire. But I believe it can never be attained. The acquisition of wealth is hell, the pursuit of wealth is attended with misery. There is more misery after one has acquired it, for one loves one's possessions, and if any mishap befalls them, the possessor becomes afflicted with woe. I do not see by what means I can escape from this danger, nor how I can fly hence, with my wife to some region free from danger. Remember, O wife, that I endeavored to migrate to some other place where we would be happy, but thou didst not then listen to me. Though frequently solicited by me, thou, O simple woman, told me, I have been born here, and here have I grown old, This is my ancestral homestead thy venerable father, O wife, and thy mother also, had, a long time ago, ascended to heaven. Thy relations also had all been dead. Oh, why then didst thou yet like to live here? Led by affection for thy relatives thou didst not then hear what I said. But the time is now come when thou art to witness the death of a relative. Oh, how sad is that spectacle for me! Or, perhaps the time is come for my own death, for I shall never be able to abandon cruelly one of my own as long as I myself am alive. Thou art my helpmate in all good deeds, self-denying and always affectionate unto me as a mother. The gods have given thee to me as a true friend, and thou art ever my prime stay. Thou hast, by my parents, been made the participator in my domestic concerns. Of pure lineage and good disposition, the mother of children, devoted to me, and so innocent, having chosen and wed thee with due rights, I cannot abandon thee, my wife, so constant in thy woes, to save my own life. How shall I myself be able to sacrifice my son, a child of tender years and yet without the hirsute appendages of manhood? How shall I sacrifice my daughter whom I have begotten myself, who hath been placed, as a pledge, in my hands by the illustrious Creator himself for bestowal on a husband, and through whom I hope to enjoy, along with my ancestors, the regions attainable by those only that have daughters, sons? Some people think that the father's affection for a son is greater, others, that his affection for a daughter is greater. Mine, however, is equal. How can I be prepared to give up the innocent daughter upon whom rest the regions of bliss, obtainable by me in after life, and my own lineage and perpetual happiness? If, again, I sacrifice myself and go to the other world, I should scarcely know any peace, for, indeed, it is evident that, left by me, these would not be able to support life. The sacrifice of any of these would be cruel and censurable. On the other hand, if I sacrifice myself, these, without me, will certainly perish. The distress into which I have fallen is great, nor do I know the means of escape. Alas, what course shall I take today with my near ones? It is well that I should die with all these, for I can live no longer. Thus ends the 159th section in the Vakabadha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 160, Vakabadha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, on hearing these words of the Brahmana, his wife said, Thou shouldst not, O Brahmana, grieve like an ordinary man. Nor is this the time for mourning. Thou hast learning, thou knowest that all men are sure to die, none should grieve for that which is inevitable. Wife, son, and daughter, all these are sought for one's own self. As thou art possessed of a good understanding, kill thou thy sorrows. I will myself go there. This, indeed, is the highest and the eternal duty of a woman, viz., that by sacrificing her life she should seek the good of her husband. Such an act done by me will make thee happy, and bring me fame in this world and eternal bliss hereafter. This, indeed, is the highest virtue that I tell thee, and thou mayest, by this, acquire both virtue and happiness. The object for which one desireth a wife hath already been achieved by thee through me. I have borne thee a daughter and a son, and thus been freed from the debt I had owed thee. Thou art well able to support and cherish the children, but I, however, can never support and cherish them like thee. Thou art my life, wealth, and Lord, bereft of thee, How shall these children of tender years, how also shall I myself exist, widowed and masterless, with 2 children depending on me? How shall I without thee keep alive the pair, myself leading an honest life? If the daughter of thine is solicited in marriage by persons dishonorable and vain and unworthy of contracting an alliance with thee, how shall I be able to protect the girl? Indeed, as birds seek with avidity for meat that hath been thrown away on the ground, so do men solicit a woman that hath lost her husband. O best of Brahmanas, solicited by wicked men, I may waver and may not be able to continue in the path that is desired by all honest men. How shall I be able to place this sole daughter of thy house, this innocent girl, in the way along which her ancestors have always walked? How shall I then be able to impart unto this child every desirable accomplishment to make him virtuous as thyself? In that season of every want what I shall become masterless, overpowering myself, who shall be materless, unworthy persons will demand the hand of this daughter of thine, like Sudras desiring to hear the Vedas. And if I bestow not upon them this girl possessing thy blood and qualities, they may even take her away by force, like crows carrying away the sacrificial butter. And beholding thy son become so unlike to thee, and thy daughter placed under the control of some unworthy persons, I shall be despised in the world by even persons that are dishonorable, and scarcely knowing myself I will certainly die. These children also, bereft of me and thee, their father, will, I doubt not, perish like fish when the water drieth up. There is no doubt that bereft of thee the 3 will perish, therefore it behoveth thee to sacrifice me. O Brahmana, persons conversant with morals have said that for women that have borne children, to predecease their lords is an act of the highest merit. Ready am I to abandon this son and this daughter, these my relations, and life itself, for thee. For a woman to be ever employed in doing agreeable offices to her lord is a higher duty than sacrifices, asceticism, vows, and chanties of every description. The act, therefore, which I intend to perform is consonant with the highest virtue and is for thy good and that of thy race. The wise have declared that children and relatives and wife and all things held dear are cherished for the purpose of liberating one's self from danger and distress. One must guard one's wealth for freeing one's self from danger, and it is by his wealth that he should cherish and protect his wife. But he must protect his own self both by means of his wife and his wealth. The learned have enunciated the truth that one's wife, son, wealth, and house are acquired with the intention of providing against accidents, foreseen or unforeseen. The wise have also said that all one's relations weighed against one's own self would not be equal unto one's self. Therefore, Reverend Sir, protect thy own self by abandoning me. O, give me leave to sacrifice myself, and cherish thou my children. Those that are conversant with the morals have, in their treatises, said, that women should never be slaughtered and that Rakshasas are not ignorant of the rules of morality. Therefore, while it is certain that the Rakshasa will kill a man, it is doubtful whether he will kill a woman. It behoveth thee, therefore, conversant as thou art with the rules of morality, to place me before the Rakshasa. I have enjoyed much happiness, have obtained much that is agreeable to me, and have also acquired great religious merit. I have also obtained from thee children that are so dear to me. Therefore, it grieveth not me to die. I have borne thee children and have also grown old. I am ever desirous of doing good to thee. Remembering all these, I have come to this resolution. O Reverend Sir, abandoning me thou mayest obtain another wife. By her thou mayest again acquire religious merit. There is no sin in this. For a man polygamy is an act of merit, but for a woman it is very sinful to betake herself to a second husband after the first. Considering all this, and remembering too that sacrifice of thy own self is censurable, O, liberate today without loss of time thy own self, thy race, and these thy children, by abandoning me. Vasampayana continued, thus addressed by her, O Bharata, the Brahmana embraced her, and they both began to weep in silence, afflicted with grief. Thus ends the 160th section in the Vakabadha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 161, Vakabadha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, on hearing these words of her afflicted parents, the daughter was filled with grief, and she addressed them, saying, why are you so afflicted and why do you so weep, as if you have none to look after you? Oh, listen to me and do what may be proper. There is little doubt that you are bound in duty to abandon me at a certain time. Sure to abandon me once, oh, abandon me now and save everything at the expense of myself alone. Men desire to have children, thinking that children would save them, in this as well as in the region hereafter. Oh, cross the stream of your difficulties by means of my poor self, as if I were a raft. A child rescueth his parents in this and the other regions, therefore is the child called by the learned Putra, rescuer. The ancestors desire daughters, sons from me, as a special means of salvation. But, without waiting for my children, I myself will rescue them by protecting the life of my father. This my brother is of tender years, so there is little doubt that he will perish if thou diest now. If thou, my father, diest and my brother followed thee, the funeral cake of the Pitris will be suspended and they will be greatly injured. Left behind by my father and brother, and by my mother also, for she will not survive her husband and son, I shall be plunged deeper and deeper in woe and ultimately perish in great distress. There can be little doubt that if thou escape from this danger as also my mother and infant brother, then thy race and the ancestral cake will be perpetuated. The son is one's own self, the wife is one's friend, the daughter, however, is the source of trouble. Do thou save thyself, therefore, by removing that source of trouble, and do thou thereby set me in the path of virtue. As I am a girl, O Father, destitute of thee, I shall be helpless and plunged in woe, and shall have to go everywhere. It is therefore that I am resolved to rescue my father's race and share the merit of that act by accomplishing this difficult task. If thou, O best of Brahmanas, goest thither, unto the Rakshasa, leaving me here, then I shall be very much pained. Therefore, O Father, be kind to me. O thou best of men, for our sake, for that of virtue and also thy race, save thyself, abandoning me, whom at one time thou shalt be constrained to part with. There need be no delay, O Father, in doing that which is inevitable. What can be more painful than that, when thou hast ascended to heaven, we shall have to go about begging our food, like dogs, from strangers. But if thou art rescued with thy relations from these difficulties, I shall then live happily in the region of the celestials. It hath been heard by us that if, after bestowing thy daughter in this way, thou offerest oblations to the gods and the celestials, they will certainly be propitious of thee. Vasampayana continued, the Brahmana and his wife, hearing these various lamentations of their daughter, became sadder than before, and the three began to weep together. Their son then, of tender years, beholding them and their daughter thus weeping together, lisped these words in a sweet tone, his eyes having dilated with delight: "Weep not, O father, nor thou, O mother, nor thou, O sister." And smilingly did the child approach each of them, and at last taking up a blade of grass said in glee, "With this I will slay Rakshasa who eateth human beings." Although all them had been plunged in woe, yet hearing what the child lisped so sweetly, joy appeared on their faces. Then Kunti, thinking that to be the proper opportunity, approached the group and said these words. Indeed, her words revived them as nectar reviveth a person that is dead. Thus ends the 161st section in the Vakabadha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 162, Vakabadha Parva continued. Kunti said, "I desire to learn from you the cause of this grief, for I will remove it, if possible." The Brahmana replied, "O thou of ascetic wealth, thy speech is, indeed, worthy of thee. But this grief is incapable of being removed by any human being. Not far off this town, there liveth a Rakshasa of the name of Vaka, which cannibal is the lord of this country and town. Thriving on human flesh, that wretched Rakshasa endued with great strength ruled this country. He being the chief of the Asuras, this town and the country in which it is situate are protected by his might. We have no fear from the machinations of any enemy, or, indeed, from any living soul. The fee, however, fixed for that cannibal is his food, which consists of a cartload of rice, 2 buffaloes, and a human being who conveyed them unto him. One after another, the householders have to send him this food. Difficult of being kept, the turn, however, cometh to a particular family at intervals of many long years. If there are any that seek to avoid it, the Rakshasa slayeth them with their children and wives and devoureth them all. There is, in this country, a city called Vaikrakya, where liveth the king of these territories. He is ignorant of the science of government, and possessed of little intelligence. He adopts not with care any measure by which these territories may be rendered safe for all time to come. But we certainly deserve it all, inasmuch as we live within the dominion of that wretched and weak monarch in perpetual anxiety. Brahmanas can never be made to dwell permanently within the dominions of any one, for they are dependent on nobody. They live rather like birds ranging all countries in perfect freedom. It hath been said that one must secure a good king, then a wife, and then wealth. It is by the acquisition of these three that one can rescue his relatives and sons. But as regards the acquisition of these three, the course of my actions hath been the reverse. Hence, plunged into a sea of danger, I am suffering sorely. That turn, destructive of one's family, hath now devolved upon me. I shall have to give unto the Rakshasa as his fee the food of the aforesaid description and one human being to boot. I have no wealth to buy a man with. I cannot by any means consent to part with any one of my family, nor do I see any way of escape from the clutches of that Rakshasa. I am now sunk in an ocean of grief from which there is no escape. I shall go to that Rakshasa today, attend by all my family in order that that wretch might devour us all at once." Thus ends the 162nd section in the Vakabadha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 163, Vakabadha Parva continued. Kunti said, "Grieve not at all, O Brahmana, on account of this danger. I see a way by which to rescue thee from that Rakshasa. Thou hast only one son, who, besides, is of very tender years, also only one daughter, young and helpless, so I do not like that any of these, or thy wife, or even thyself should go unto the Rakshasa. I have 6 sons, O Brahmana, let one of them go, carrying in thy behalf the tribute of that Rakshasa." Hearing this, the Brahmana replied, "To save my own life I shall never suffer this to be done. I shall never sacrifice, to save myself, the life of a Brahmana or of a guest. Indeed, even those that are of low origin and of sinful practices refuse to do what thou askest me to do. It is said that one should sacrifice one's self and one's offspring for the benefit of a Brahmana. I regard this advice excellent and I like to follow it too. When I have to choose between the death of a Brahmana and that of my own, I would prefer the latter. The killing of a Brahmana is the highest sin, and there is no expiation for it. I think a reluctant sacrifice of one's own self is better than the reluctant sacrifice of a Brahmana. O blessed lady, in sacrificing myself I do not become guilty of self-destruction. No sin can attach to me when another will take my life. But if I deliberately consent to the death of a Brahmana, it would be a cruel and sinful act, from the consequence of which there is no escape. The learned have said that the abandonment of one who hath come to thy house or sought thy protection, as also the killing of one who seeketh death at thy hands, is both cruel and sinful. The illustrious among those conversant with practices allowable in seasons of distress, have before now said that one should never perform an act that is cruel and censurable. It is well for me that I should today perish myself with my wife, but I would never sanction the death of a Brahmana. Kunti said, "I too am firmly of opinion, O Brahmana, that Brahmanas should ever be protected. As regards myself, no son of mine would be less dear to me even if I had 100 instead of the 5 I have. But this Rakshasa will not be able to kill my son, for that son of mine is endued with great prowess and energy, and skilled in mantras. He will faithfully deliver to the Rakshasa his food, but will, I know to a certainty, rescue himself. I have seen before many mighty Rakshasas of huge bodies engaged in combat with my heroic son and killed too by him. But, O Brahmana, do not disclose this fact to anybody, for if it known, persons desirous of obtaining this power, will, from curiosity, always trouble my sons. The wise have said that if my son imparteth any knowledge, without the assent of his preceptor, unto any person, my son himself will no longer be able to profit by that knowledge." Thus addressed by Pritha, the Brahmana with his wife became exceedingly glad and assented to Kunti's speech, which was unto them as nectar. Then Kunti, accompanied by the Brahmana, went unto the son of Vayu, Bhima, and asked him to accomplish that difficult task. Bhima replied unto them, saying, "So be it." Thus ends the 163rd section in the Vakabadha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 164, Vakabadha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, after Bhima had pledged himself to accomplish the task, saying, "I will do it," the Pandavas, O Bharata, returned home with the alms they had obtained during the day. Then Yudhishthira, the son of Pandu from Bhima's countenance alone, suspected the nature of the task he had undertaken to accomplish. Sitting by the side of his mother, Yudhishthira asked her in private, "What is the task, O mother, that Bhima had terrible prowess seeketh to accomplish? Doth he do so at thy command or of his own accord?" Kunti replied, "Bhima, that chastiser of foes, will at my command, do this great deed for the good of the Brahmana and the liberation of this town." Yudhishthira said, "What rash act hast thou done, O mother? It is difficult of being performed, and almost amounted to suicide. The learned never applaud the abandonment of one's own child. Why dost thou, O mother, wish to sacrifice thy own child for the sake of another's? Thou hast, O mother, by this abandonment of thy child, acted not only against the course of human practices but also against the teachings of the Vedas. I, that Bhima, relying on whose arms we sleep happily in the night and hope to recover the kingdom of which we have been deprived by the covetous son of Dhritarashtra, that hero of immeasurable energy, remembering whose prowess Duryodhana and Sakuni do not sleep a wink during the whole night, and by whose prowess we were rescued from the palace of lack and various other dangers, that Bhima who caused the death of Puchana, and relying on whose might we regard ourselves as having already slain the sons of Dhritarashtra, and acquired the whole earth with all her wealth, upon what considerations, O mother, hast thou resolved upon abandoning him? Hast thou been deprived of thy reason? Hath thy understanding been clouded by the calamities thou hast undergone?" On hearing these words of her son, Kunti said, "O Yudhishthira, thou needst not be at all anxious on account of Vrikodra. I have not come to this resolve owing to any weakness of understanding. Respected by him and our sorrows assuaged, we have, O son, been living in the house of this Brahmana, unknown to the sons of Dhritarashtra. For requiting, O son, that Brahmana, I have resolved to do this. He, indeed, is a man upon whom good offices are never lost. The measure of his requital becometh greater than the measure of the services he receiveth. Beholding the prowess of Bhima on the occasion of our escape from the house of lack, and from the destruction also of Hidimban, my confidence in Vrikodra is great. The might of Bhima's arms is equal unto that of 10,000 elephants. It was, therefore, that he succeeded in carrying you all, each heavy as an elephant, from Vanavata. There is no one on earth equal unto Bhima in might. He may even overcome that foremost of warriors, the holder of the thunderbolt himself. Soon after his birth he fell from my lap on the breast of the mountain. By the weight of his body the mass of stone on which he fell down broke into pieces. From this also, O son of Pandu, I have come to know Bhima's might. For this reason have I resolved to set him against the Brahmana, as foe. I have not acted in this from foolishness or ignorance or from motive of gain. I have deliberately resolved to do this virtuous deed. By this act, O Yudhishthira, two objects will be accomplished. One is a requital of the services rendered by the Brahmana, and the other is the acquisition of high religious merit. It is my conviction that the Kshatriya who rendereth help unto a Brahmana in anything acquireth regions of bliss hereafter. So also a Kshatriya who saveth the life of a Kshatriya achieveth that great fame in this world as in the other. A Kshatriya rendering help unto a Vaisya also on this earth certainly acquires worldwide popularity. One of the kingly tribe should protect even the Sudra who cometh to him for protection. If he doth so, in his next life he receiveth his birth in a royal line, commanding prosperity and the respect of other kings. O scion of Puru's race, The illustrious Vyasa of wisdom acquired by hard ascetic toil told me so in bygone days. It is, therefore, that I have resolved upon accomplishing this. Thus ends the 164th section in the Vakabadha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 165, Vakabadha Parva continued. Having heard these words of his mother, Yudhishthira said, "What thou, O mother, hast deliberately done, moved by compassion for the afflicted Brahmana, is, indeed, excellent. Bhima will certainly come back with life, after having slain the cannibal, inasmuch as thou art, O mother, always compassionate unto Brahmanas. But tell the Brahmana, O mother, that he doth not do anything whereby the dwellers in this town may know all about it, and O make him promise to keep thy request." Vasampayana continued, "Then, when the night passed away, Bhimsena, the son of Pandu, taking with him the Rakshasa's food, set out for the place where the cannibal lived. The mighty son of Pandu, approaching the forest where the Rakshasa dwelt, began to eat himself the food he carried, calling loudly to the Rakshasa by name. The Rakshasa, inflamed with anger at Bhima's word, came out and approached the place where Bhima was. Of huge body and great strength, of red eyes, red beard, and red hair, he was terrible to behold, and he came, pressing deep the earth with his tread. The opening of his mouth was from ear to ear, and his ears themselves were straight as arrows. Of grim visage his forehead was furrowed into 3 lines. Beholding Bhima eating his food, the Rakshasa advanced, biting his nether lip and expanding his eyes in wrath. And addressing Bhima he said, "Who is this fool, who desiring to go to the abode of Yam, eateth in my very sight the food intended for me?" Hearing these words, Bhima, O Bharata, smiled, in derision, and disregarding the Rakshasa, continued eating with averted face. Beholding this, the cannibal uttered a frightful yell and with both arms upraised ran at Bhima, desiring to kill him there and then. Even then, disregarding the Rakshasa and casting only a single glance at him, Vrikodra, that slayer of hostile heroes, continued to eat the Rakshasa's food. Filled with wrath at this, the Rakshasa struck, from behind, with both his arms a heavy blow on the back of Vrikodra, the son of Kunti. But Bhima, though struck heavily by the mighty Rakshasa, with both his hands, did not even look up at the Rakshasa but continued to eat as before. Then the mighty Rakshasa, inflamed with wrath, tore up a tree and ran at Bhima for striking him again. Meanwhile the mighty Bhima, that bull among men, had leisurely eaten up the whole of that food and washing himself stood cheerfully for fight. Then O Bharata, possessed of great energy, Bhima, smiling in derision, caught with his left hand the tree hurled at him by the Rakshasa in wrath. Then that mighty Rakshasa, tearing up many more trees, hurled them at Bhima, and the Pandav also hurled as many at the Rakshasa. Then, O king, the combat with trees between that human being and the Rakshasa became so terrible that the region around soon became destitute of trees. Then the Rakshasa, saying that he was none else than Vaka, sprang upon the Pandav and seized the mighty Bhima with his arms. That mighty hero also clasping with his own strong arms the strong-armed Rakshasa, and exerting himself actively, began to drag him violently. Dragged by Bhima and dragging Bhima also, the cannibal was overcome with great fatigue. The earth began to tremble in consequence of the strength they both exerted, and large trees that stood there broke into pieces. Then Bhima, beholding the cannibal overcome with fatigue, pressed him down on the earth with his knees and began to strike him with great force. Then placing one knee on the middle of the Rakshasa's back, Bhima seized his neck with his right hand and the cloth on his waist with his left, and bent him double with great force. The cannibal then roared frightfully. And, O monarch, he also began to vomit blood while he was being thus broken on Bhima's knee. Thus ends the 165th section in the Vakabadha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 166, Vakabadha Parva continued. Vasampayana said, then Vaka, huge as a mountain, thus broken, on Bhima's knee, died, uttering frightful yells. Terrified by these sounds, the relatives of that Rakshasa came out, O king, with their attendants. Bhima, that foremost of smiters, seeing them so terrified and deprived of reason, comforted them and made them promise to give up cannibalism, saying, do not ever again kill human beings. If ye kill men, ye will have to die even as Vaka. Those Rakshasas hearing this speech of Bhima, said, so be it, and gave, O king, the desired promise. From that day, O Bharata, the Rakshasas of the region were seen by the inhabitants of that town to be very peaceful towards mankind. Then Bhima, dragging the lifeless cannibal, placed him at one of the gates of the town and went away unobserved by anyone. The kinsmen of Vaka, beholding him slain by the might of Bhima, became frightened and fled in different directions. Meanwhile Bhima, having slain the Rakshasa, returned to the Brahmana's abode and related to Yudhishthira all that had happened in detail. The next morning the inhabitants of the towns in coming out saw the Rakshasa lying dead on the ground, his body covered with blood. Beholding that terrible cannibal, huge as a mountain cliff, thus mangled and lying on the ground, the hair of the spectators stood erect. Returning to Ekachakra, they soon gave the intelligence. Then, O king, the citizens by thousands, accompanied by their wives, young and old, all began to come to the spot for beholding the Vaka, and they were all amazed at seeing that superhuman feat instantly, O monarch. They began to pray to their gods. Then they began to calculate whose turn it had been the day before to carry food to the Rakshasa. And ascertaining this, they all came to that Brahmana and asked him to satisfy their curiosity. Thus asked by them repeatedly, that bull among Brahmanas, desirous of concealing the Pandavas, said these words unto all the citizens. A certain high-souled Brahmana, skilled in mantras, beheld me weeping with my relatives after I had been ordered to supply the Rakshasas food. Asking me the cause and ascertaining the distress of the town, that first of Brahmanas gave me every assurance and with smiles said, I shall carry the food for that wretched Rakshasa today. Do not fear for me. Saying this he conveyed the food towards the forest of Vaka. This deed, so beneficial unto us all, hath very certainly been done by him. Then those Brahmanas and Kshatriyas of the city, hearing this, wondered much. And the Vaisyas and the Sudras also became exceedingly glad, and they all established a festival in which the worship of Brahmanas was the principal ceremony, in remembrance of this Brahmana who had relieved them from their fears of Vaka. Thus ends the 166th section in the Vakabadha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 167, Chakraratha Parva. After this citizens returned to their respective homes, and the Padavas continued to dwell at Ekachakra as before. Janamejaya said, O Brahmana, what did those tigers among men the Pandavas do after they had slain the Rakshasavaka? Vasampayana said, the Pandavas, O king, after slaying the Rakshasavaka, continued to dwell in the abode of that Brahmana, employed in the study of the Vedas. Within a few days there came a Brahmana of rigid vows unto the abode of their host to take up his quarters there. Their host, that bull among Brahmanas, ever hospitable unto all guests, worshipping the newly arrived Brahmana with due ceremonies, gave him quarters in his own abode. Then those bulls among men, the Pandavas, with their mother Kunti, solicited the new lodger to narrate to them his interesting experiences. The Brahmana spake to them of various countries and shrines and holy rivers, of kings and many wonderful provinces and cities. And after this narration was over, that Brahmana, O Janamejaya, also spoke of the wonderful self-joys of Yajnasena's daughter, the princess of Panchala, and of the births of Drishtadara, Umna and C.I.E, and of the birth, without the intervention of a woman, of Krishna, Draupadi, at the great sacrifice of Drupda. Then those bulls among men, the Pandavas, hearing of these extraordinary facts regarding that illustrious monarch, Drupda, and desiring to know the details thereof, asked the Brahmana, after his narration was concluded, to satisfy their curiosity. The Pandavas said, How, O Brahmana, did the birth of Drishtadayumna, the son of Drupda, take place from the sacrificial fire? How also did the extraordinary birth of Krishna take place from the center of the sacrificial platform? How also did Drupda's son learn all weapons from the great bowman Drona? And, O Brahmana, how and for whom and for what reason was the friendship between Drona and Drupda broken off? Vasampayana continued, thus questioned, O monarch, by those bulls among men, the Brahmana narrated all the particulars about the birth of Draupadi. Thus ends the 167th section in the Chakraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 168, Chakraratha Parva continued. The Brahmana said, at that region where the Ganges entered the plains there lived a great rishi, devoted to the austerest of penances, of rigid vows and great wisdom. His name was Bharadwaja. One day, on coming to the Ganges to perform his ablutions, the RZS, too saw the upseed Hiritachi, who had come before, standing on the bank after her ablutions were over. And it so happened that a wind arose and disrobed the Apsara standing there. And the Rishi beholding her thus disrobed, felt the influence of desire. Though practicing the vow of continence from his very youth, as soon as he felt the influence of desire, the Rishi's vital fluid came out. And as it came out, he held it in a pot, Drona, and of that fluid thus preserved in a pot was born a son who came to be called Drona, the pot-born. And Drona studied all the Vedas and their several branches. And Bharadwaja had a friend named Prishata who was the king of Panchalas. And about the time that Drona was born, Prishata also obtained a son named Drupda. And that bull amongst Kesuatriyas, Prishata's son, going every day to that asylum of Bharadwaja, played and studied with Drona. And after Prishata's death, Drupda succeeded him on the throne. Drona about this time heard that the great Brahmana hero, Rama, on the eve of his retiring into the woods, was resolved to give away all his wealth. Hearing this, the son of Bharadwaja repaired unto Rama who was about to retire into the woods and addressing him, said, O best of Brahmanas, know me to be Drona, who hath come to thee to obtain thy wealth. Rama replied, saying, I have given away everything. All that I now have is this body of mine and my weapons. O Brahmana, thou mayest ask of me one of these two, either my body or my weapons. Then Drona said, It behoveth thee, sir, to give me all thy weapons together with the mysteries of their use and withdrawal. The Brahmana continued, Then Rama of Bhrigu's race, saying, So be it, gave all his weapons unto Drona, who obtaining them regarded himself as crowned with success. Drona, obtaining from Rama the most exalted of all weapons, called the Brahma weapon, became exceedingly glad and acquired a decided superiority over all men. Then the son of Bharadwaja, endued with great prowess, went to King Drupta, and approaching that monarch, that tiger among men, said, Know me for thy friend. I, hearing this, Drupta said, One of low birth can never be the friend of one whose lineage is pure, nor can one who is not a warrior have a warrior for his friend. So also one who is not a king cannot have a king as his friend. Why dost thou, therefore, desire to revive our former friendship? The Brahmana continued, Drona, gifted with great intelligence, was extremely mortified at this, and settling in his mind some means of humiliating the king of the Panchala, he went to the capital of the Kurus, called after the name of an elephant. Then Bhishma, taking with him his grandsons, presented them unto the wise son of Bharadwaja as his pupils for instruction, along with various kinds of wealth. Then Drona, desirous of humiliating King Drupta, called together his disciples and addressed them, Ye sinless ones, it behoveth you, after you have been accomplished in arms, to give me as preceptorial fee something that I cherish in my heart. Then Arjuna and others said unto their preceptor, So be it. After a time, when the Pandavas became skilled in arms and sure aims, demanding of them his fee, he again told them these words, Drupta, the son of Prishata, is the king of Chakravarti. Take away from him his kingdom, and give it unto me. Then the Pandavas, defeating Drupta in battle and taking him prisoner along with his ministers, offered him unto Drona, who, beholding the vanquished monarch, said, O king, I again solicit thy friendship. And because none who is not a king deserveth to be the friend of a king, there, O Yajnasena, I am resolved to divide thy kingdom amongst ourselves. While thou art the king of the country to the south of Bhagirathi, Ganges, I will rule the country to the north. The Brahmana continued, the king of the Panchalas, thus addressed by the wise son of Bharadwaja, told that best of Brahmanas and foremost of all persons conversant with weapons, these words, O high-soiled son of Bharadwaja, blessed be thou, let it be so. Let there be eternal friendship between us as thou desirest. Thus addressing each other and establishing a permanent bond between themselves, Drona and the king of Panchala, both of them chastisers of foes, went away to the places they come from. But the thought of that humiliation did not leave the king's mind for a single moment. Sad at heart, the king began to waste away. Thus ends the 168th section in the Chakraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Adi Parva. Section 169, Chakraratha Parva continued. The Brahmana continued, King Drupta, after this, distressed at heart, wandered among many asylums of Brahmanas in search of superior Brahmanas well skilled in sacrificial rites. Overwhelmed with grief and eagerly yearning for children, the king always said, Oh, I have no offspring surpassing all in accomplishments. And the monarch, from great despondency, always said, "Oh fie on those children that I have and on my relatives." And ever thinking of revenging himself on Drona, the monarch sighed incessantly. And that best of kings, O Bharata, even after much deliberation, saw no way of overcoming, by his Kshatriya might, the prowess and discipline and training and accomplishment of Drona. Wandering along the banks of the Yamuna and the Ganges, the monarch once came upon a sacred asylum of Brahmanas. There was in that asylum no Brahmana who was not a Snetajka, no one who was not of rigid vows, and none who was not virtuous to a high degree. And the king saw there two Brahmana sages named Yaja and Upyaja, both of rigid vows and souls under complete control and belonging to the most superior order. They were both devoted to the study of the ancient institutes and sprung from the race of Kasyapa. And those best of Brahmanas were well able to help the king in the attainment of his object. The king then, with great assiduity and singleness of purpose, began to court this pair of excellent Brahmanas. Ascertaining the superior accomplishments of the younger of the two, the king courted in private Upyaja of rigid vows, by the offer of every desirable acquisition. Employed in paying homage to the feet of Upyaja, always addressing in sweet words and offering him every object of human desire, Drupta, after worshipping that Brahmana, addressed him, one day, saying, "O Upyaja, O Brahmana, if thou performest those sacrificial rites by virtue of which I may obtain a son who may slay Drona, I promise thee 10,000 kin, or whatever else may be agreeable to thee, O first of Brahmanas, truly am I ready to bestow on thee." Thus addressed by the king, Rishi replied, saying, "I cannot perform such rites." But Drupta, without accepting this reply as final, once more began to serve and pay homage unto that Brahmana. Then, after the expiration of a year, Upyaja, that first of Brahmanas, O monarch, addressing Drupta in sweet tone, said, "My elder brother, Yaja, one day, while wandering through the deep woods, took up a fruit that had fallen upon a spot the purity of which he cared not to inquire about. I was following him, at the time, and observed this unworthy act of his. Indeed, he entertains no scruples in accepting things impure. In accepting that particular fruit he saw not any impropriety of sinful nature. Indeed, he who observeth not purity, in one instance, is not very likely to observe it in the other instances. When he lived in the house of his preceptor, employed in studying the institutes, he always used to eat impure remnants of other people's feasts. He always speaks approvingly of food and entertains no dislike for anything. Arguing from these, I believe that my brother covets earthly acquisitions. Therefore, O king, go unto him, he will perform spiritual offices for thee." Hearing these words of Upyaja, King Drupta, though entertaining a low opinion of Yaji, nevertheless went to his abode. Worshipping Yaja, who was still worthy of homage, Drupta said unto him, "O master, perform thou spiritual offices for me, and I will give thee 80,000 kin. Enmity with Drona burneth my heart, it behoveth thee therefore to cool that heart of mine. For most of those conversant with the Vedas, Drona is also skilled in the Brahma weapon, and for this, Drona hath overcome me in a contest arising from impaired friendship. Gifted with great intelligence, the son of Bharadwaja is, now, the chief preceptor of the Kurus. There is no Kshatriya in this world superior to him. His bow is full 6 cubits long and looks formidable, and his shafts are capable of slaying every living being. That great bowman, the high-souled son of Bharadwaja, habited as a Brahmana, is destroying the Kshatriya power all over the earth. Indeed, he is like a second Jamdagnya intended for the extermination of the Kshatriya race. There is no man on earth who can overcome the terrible force of his weapons. Like a blazing fire fed with clarified butter, Drona, possessed of Brahma might and uniting it with Kshatriya might, consumeth every antagonist in battle. But, thy, Brahma force is greater in itself than, Drona's, Brahma force united with Kshatriya might. Therefore, as I am inferior, to, Drona, in consequence of repossession of Kshatriya might alone, I solicit the aid of thy Brahma force, having obtained the so superior to Drona in knowledge of Brahma O Yaja, perform that sacrifice be and means of which I may obtain a son invincible in battle and capable of slaying Drona. Ready am I to give thee 10,000 kin. Hearing these words of Drupta, Yaja said, so be it. Yaja then began to recollect the various ceremonies appertaining to the particular sacrifice. And knowing the affair to be a very grave one, he asked the assistance of Upyaja who coveted nothing. Then Yaja promised to perform the sacrifice for the destruction of Drona. Then the great ascetic Upyaja spoke unto King Drupta of everything required for the grand sacrifice, by aid of fire, from which the king was to obtain offspring. And he said, O king, a child shall be born unto thee, endued as then as thou desirest, with great prowess, great energy, and great strength. The Brahmana continued, then King Drupta, impelled by the desire of obtaining a son who was to slay Drona, began, for the success of his wish, to make the necessary preparations. And when everything was complete, Yaja, after having poured libations of clarified butter on the sacrificial fire, commanded Drupta's queen, saying, Come hither, O queen, O daughter-in-law of Prishata. A son and a daughter have arrived for thee. Hearing this, the queen said, O Brahmana, my mouth is yet filled with saffron and other perfumed things. My body also beareth many sweet scents. I am hardly fit for accepting the sanctified butter which is to give me offspring. Wait for me a little, O Yaja. Wait for that happy consummation. Yaja, however, replied, O lady, whether thou comest or waitest, why should not the object of this sacrifice be accomplished when the oblation hath already been prepared by me and sanctified by Upyaja's invocations? The Brahmana continued, having said this, Yaja poured the sanctified libation on the fire, whereupon arose from those flames a child resembling a celestial who possessing the effulgence of fire, was terrible to behold. With a crown on this head and his body encased in excellent armor, sword in hand, and bearing a bow and arrows, he frequently sent forth loud roars. And immediately after his birth, he ascended an excellent chariot and went about in it for some time. Then the Panchalas in great joy shouted, Excellent, excellent. The very earth seemed at that time unable to bear the weight of the Panchalas, mad with joy. Then, marvelous to say, the voice of some invisible spirit in the skies said, This prince hath been born for the destruction of Drona. He shall dispel all the fears of the Panchalas and spread their fame. He shall also remove the sorrow of the king. And there arose, after this, from the center of the sacrificial platform, a daughter also, called Panchali, who, blessed with great good fortune, was exceedingly handsome. Her eyes were black, and large as lotus petals, her complexion was dark, and her locks were blue and curly, her nails were beautifully convex, and bright as burnished copper, her eyebrows were fair, and bosom was deep. Indeed, she resembled the veritable daughter of a celestial born among men. Her body gave out fragrance like that of a blue lotus, perceivable from a distance of full 2 miles. Her beauty was such that she had no equal on earth. Like a celestial herself, she could be desired, in marriage, by a celestial, a Danvat or a Yaksh. When this girl of fair hips was born, an incorporeal voice said, "This dark-complexioned girl will be the first of all women, and she will be the cause of the destruction of many Kshatriyas." This slender-waisted one will, in time, accomplish the purpose of the gods, and along with her many a danger will overtake the Kauravas. On hearing these words, the Panchalas uttered a loud leonine roar, and the earth was unable to bear the weight of that joyous concourse. Then beholding the boy and the girl, the daughter-in-law of Prishata, desiring to have them, approached Yaja and said, "Let not these know anyone else except myself as their mother." Yaja, desiring to do good unto the king, said, "So be it." Then the Brahmanas, present there, their expectations fully gratified, bestowed names upon the newborn pair. "Let this son of King Drupta," they said, "be called Drishtadayumna because of his excessive audacity and because of his being born like the Yumna with a natural male and weapon." And they also said, "Because this daughter is so dark in complexion, she should be called Krishna, the dark." The Brahmana continued, "Thus were born those twins of the great sacrifice of Drupta." And the great Drona, bringing the Panchala prince into his own abode, taught him all weapons in requital of half the kingdom he had formerly taken from Drupta. The high-souled son of Bharadwaja, regarding destiny to be inevitable, did what would perpetuate his own great deeds. Thus ends the 169th section in the Chakraratha Parva of the Adi Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.